Proceed, Your Honor. Yes, sir. Sir, would you state your name and your occupation?
My name is Daniel Thomas Radcliffe, and I'm a crime laboratory analyst working in the crime scene section at the Orlando Regional Crime Laboratory.
And could you tell the jury, please, who you work for?
I work for the Florida Department of Law Enforcement.
And how long have you been so employed?
I've been employed with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement since October of 1981.
And do you have a specialty, or are you assigned to a particular division with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement?
Yes, sir.
Can you tell the jury what that is?
I work in the crime scene section of the Orlando Regional Crime Laboratory and also in the gunshot residue section.
All right, sir. And can you tell the jury, please, your training and experience that prepared you for your current role?
Yes, sir. I have a Bachelor of Science degree from Indiana State University, majoring in biology with a minor in chemistry. I worked as a forensic scientist since 1974. In the specialty of crime scene examinations, I went through the crime scene training program in 1985, completed the training program at the Sanford Regional Crime Laboratory, and started working as a crime scene analyst in 1986. And I've worked as a crime scene analyst since that time.
All right, sir. Have you ever been qualified as an expert in the field of analyses of crime scenes in the criminal courts of the state of Florida?
Yes, sir, I have.
Your Honor, please, we would so tend Mr. Radcliffe. You may inquire, sir.
I have no questions. It's good.
You may proceed. Your Honor, please tenure Mr. Radcliffe as an expert in the field of crime scene analysis and investigation. Mr. Radcliffe, did you have occasion to examine an automobile in connection with the homicide of Richard Mallard?
Yes, sir, I did.
And I would ask you to look at Exhibit 13. In evidence, ask if you recognize the vehicle.
Yes, I do.
Does that appear to be the vehicle about which you will shortly testify?
Yes, sir.
All right, sir. I would also ask you to examine for identification exhibits composite N, 3, 4, and 6, and also the exhibit for identification double A. And I'll ask you to indicate whether or not you recognize what each of those exhibits represent. You don't need to tell us what they are, but do you recognize what they are?
Yes, sir.
All right, sir. And also the item of material that is in the envelope, would you examine that? I believe that's double A for identification. You may take the material out and look at the actual exhibit which is inside. You recognize it?
Yes, sir, I do.
All right, sir. Can you tell the jury in connection with this case what the photographs represent that I tendered to you, and I would ask, well, yeah, what do the 3 interior photographs represent?
This particular photograph shows the...
Object to publishing to the jury prior to being admitted, Your Honor.
What I'd like to do is first describe what they represent. And I ask you if that's a true and accurate depiction, then we'll offer them in evidence, and then we publish it.
Yes, sir.
What do the photographs represent?
The first photograph that I'm looking at shows the interior of this vehicle, which is a 77 Cadillac. The second photograph that I'm looking at shows the trunk area of this 77 Cadillac. And the third photograph shows the driver's seat of this 1977 Cadillac.
And you previously identified the 77 Cadillac from the exhibit that has already been admitted into evidence, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, sir, and could you identify from the back of the interior photographs, I think they are composite exhibit N, 3, 4, and another number. One is N. See the N?
Yes, sir.
N.
This photograph is in composite 4. This photograph is in composite 6. This photograph is in composite 3.
And those are the photographs about which you just testified?
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, we would offer the photographs and evidence this time.
Councilman Jerry Tennant, photograph.
We have no objection, Your Honor.
Let the item be received and marked and noticed by the prosecutor. Mr. Kenner, would you give the item, sir?
Yes, Your Honor, thank you. And sir, would you look at the fabric which is contained in exhibit AA for identification? That envelope was opened in court moments before you came in. Do you recognize the contents of the envelope?
Yes, sir, I do.
And can you tell the jury in the court what the contents are?
This manila envelope contains upholstery from the back area of the driver's seat of this 1977 Cadillac.
They belong to Mr. Mallory?
Yes, sir.
But I think the question is unclear.
I think I can rephrase it.
All right, sir. Clear it up. Let me sustain it at that. The way it's phrased.
Thank you, Your Honor. You recognize photograph 13?
Yes, sir.
Is that the Cadillac automobile from which the upholstery was removed?
Yes, it was.
What did you do when you removed the upholstery?
Objection, assumes the fact on the evidence.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Do you have the upholstery from the Cadillac in your possession?
Yes, I do.
Is that it contained in Exhibit AA for identification?
Yes, sir.
How did you remove it and what did you do with it? And what
Same
was the purpose?
objection, Your Honor.
Let's go ahead and finish.
How did you remove it and what did you do with it?
Same objection, Your Honor.
Second overruled.
I removed this piece of upholstery using a scalpel, and I then placed this fabric in this manila envelope and sealed up the manila envelope.
All right, sir. Did you run any tests on the material yourself?
Yes, I did.
And can you tell the court and the jury what type of test you ran on it?
Yes, sir. I submitted a stained area on this upholstery to what's called the Kastle-Meyer test, which is a presumptive test for blood.
And could you tell the jury what the results of that test were?
Yes, this test indicated that these stains were blood.
With regard to the photograph of the automobile that shows the interior, could you describe with regard to Exhibit 14-2 how your testimony concerning the upholstery relates to that photograph, if it does?
Yes, sir. The upholstery that's in this manila envelope is the upholstery that came from the stained area that's apparent in this photograph.
Your Honor, please, we would offer the upholstery sample of evidence this time.
Counsel.
No objection.
Let the item be received and marked and noticed by the following number.
It's number 15.
May I have just a moment, Your Honor?
Yes, sir.
No further questions, Your Honor. Thank you.
You may inquire.
I have no questions for this witness, Your Honor.
Recommend that down. May the witness be excused.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Subject to recall.
Yes, sir. If you'll give a telephone number to the defense counsel.
And please record. Ma'am, would you tell us your full name, please?
My name is Linda DeJong Miller,
And is it Miss or Mrs. Miller?
Mrs.
Miss Miller, do you have a place of employment?
Yes, I do.
And where is that, ma'am?
I work at OK Pawn Shop.
How long have you been working at that establishment?
About 3 years.
And are you in any relationship to the owner of that business?
Yes, I am. He's my father, Robert DeJong.
Ma'am, were you working there on or about December the 6th, 1989?
Yes, sir, I was.
And could you tell us a little bit about what your duties would have been back on December the 6th, 1989 in regard to what in particular you would do in your job description?
Okay. Someone will come into the shop and bring an item of value, and we will determine at that time how much we will loan on that item. And then we take a picture positive ID card. We notate the information off of the ID card onto the form, putting the number and the description of the person. We name the items. We put the serial number, the model number, the types, brands of whatever the situation is. We have them initial it and sign it and give us a thumbprint, and then we initial it and give them the money.
Now, when you indicate that you obtained some type of identification,
Yes, sir.
can that be in the form of driver's license or other picture identification?
Yes, sir.
And the thumbprint that you mentioned, how was that placed upon the document you described?
We hand the thumbprint pad to the person, and they place their thumbprint into it, and then they put their thumbprint onto our form.
Was it your policy then and now to observe that individual both signing and putting their thumbprint on the document?
Yes, sir. We don't leave them until we've seen them put the thumbprint on the form.
Could you tell, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, business that you're in, how many people, how many members of the public would you say you come into contact or were coming into contact back in December of 1989 on a daily basis?
We see anywhere from 20 to 30 people a day doing this.
Ma'am, let me show you that approach on.
Yes, sir.
Ma'am, let me show you the mark that states K for identification purposes.
Okay.
Ask you if you could identify this document. First of all, do you recognize it?
Yes, I do.
If you're able to recognize it, could you explain to the court and the jury how you were able to recognize it?
Okay, this is a regulation form from the OK Pawn Shop, and I see that I'm the one that took this. I've got my initials down here. What else do you want to know about it?
Your initials, are they placed there by you in the presence of the individual who has pawned the items?
Yes, sir, they are.
And does the pawn slip also indicate what the nature of those items are that are pawned?
Yes, sir, it does.
And you take some type of identification as to, as best you can, serial numbers,
Yes, sir.
and assess a value to that.
Yes, sir.
And that value, is that something that is an offer that you make as the person receiving the pawned item to the individual who is giving it to you?
That's right.
And if they don't like that amount, then they don't have to accept it, they walk off with the item, is that correct?
That's true. They can take it someplace else.
Okay, now the thumbprint,
Yes, sir.
which is on the exhibit before you,
Yes, sir.
was that placed there by an individual in your presence?
Yes, sir, it was.
And is this document kept in the ordinary course of the business?
Yes, it is.
Please the court to state with all this exhibit as states evidence.
May we see the document, Your Honor?
Yes, sir. Are you ready?
Ma'am, the exhibit that you have before you,
Yes, sir.
is it my understanding that you are the individual that took in the pawn?
Yes, I did.
And does that document fairly and accurately depict the items, if any, that were pawned by the individual who placed the thumbprint on the pawn ticket?
Yes, sir. Do you want to know what the items are?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, there was a 35mm camera. It was a Minolta Freedom 200, and the serial number is here, and how much I loaned her on it. And then there was a radar detector, a Micronta Road Patrol X, and the serial number is notated here, and how much I loaned her on it. And then the total of what I loaned her.
Do you indicate whether or not the Micronta is what's known commonly as a radar detector?
It is a radar detector.
And the name of the individual who pawned those items as was identified to you on December 6, 1989.
Okay, as identified to me was Cammie Marsh Green at 5 High Ridge Drive, Holly Hill, Florida.
And can you tell the court what type of identification would have been used, if you can, from refreshing your recollection from that pawn slip?
Okay, based on this slip, it said it was a Florida driver's license, and I have the driver's license number notated here.
And that is contained on the pawn slip.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Your Honor. At this time, we have no further questions.
Warren?
Ma'am, good afternoon. My name is Billy Nillis, and I, along with Mr. Miller and Ms. Jenkins, represent Ms. Wuornos. When Mr. Demore asked you about the items you needed to look at the document to refresh your recollection, is that correct?
Yes.
And why is that?
Why is that?
Yeah, why did you need to look at the document?
Because it's been 2 years, and I just want to refresh my memory of what this is. We see a lot of people every day, and I don't remember what happened 2 years ago.
Specifically, do you remember the day that these items were pawned?
No, I do not.
Do you remember if 1 or 2 people came into the store that day?
I'm sure if it was in December of '89, which it says it was December 6th of '89, I'm sure there was a lot of people in the shop that day.
Do you remember if any, well, withdrawn. The item that's listed is a 35 millimeter camera
Yes,
on
sir.
the document. The document says nothing about a Polaroid, does it?
No, it does not.
Nothing further, Your Honor. Thank you, ma'am.
Ms. Miller, is there any way, based upon the way you conduct your business, that an individual could walk into your pawn shop, you initial it, and not put their thumbprint on in your presence?
No, we always have them put the thumbprint and then we initial it.
And is it your testimony that on December the 6th, 1989, the person who came in identifying themselves as Cammy Marsh Green placed their thumbprint on the document that's now before your safe exhibit?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very
Yes,
much. Your Honor, may this witness be excused?
Yeah. I have one question, Your Honor.
All right.
Ma'am, you don't remember if 1 or 2 people came in for this actual pawning? In other words, if this Cammy Green person was accompanied by someone?
Please understand that that was 2 years ago. I don't remember anything from 2 years ago.
Thank you.
You need to keep the witness?
No, sir. That should be released.
Yes, ma'am, you may stand down, let me have the letter.
Yes, sir.
This one,
Yes, sir.
you may depart, a rule has been invoked to prohibit you from discussing your testimony until the case is concluded.
Yes, sir.
Now, anybody need to recall the witness?
Your Honor, I don't anticipate that being assessed.
You may depart.
Thank you.
Thank you. May it please the court.
Be quiet.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Hello.
Would you please tell us your full name and your occupation?
My name is Jenny T. Aherd, and I'm employed by the Florida Department of Law Enforcement at the Orlando Regional Crime Laboratory.
And is that Mr. or Mrs. Aherd?
Mrs.
Mrs. Aherd, how long have you been employed by the Florida Department of Law Enforcement?
Since January of 1981.
And have you attained any particular specialty while employed with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement?
Yes, sir, I have 2 areas of expertise. One is in latent print examination, and the other one is footwear tire track examination.
Have you had any type of schooling or educational background in latent print identification?
Yes, sir, I have. Prior to being employed by the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, I was employed by the Orange County Sheriff's Department. When I was employed by them, I was trained on the job to do fingerprint classification and searching as a technician. I also received training in the comparison of latent print examinations. I'm a member of the International Association for Identification and the Florida Division of the International Association for Identification, and attend training conferences by those agencies. I've also attained some training from the Florida Department of Law Enforcement and from the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
Ma'am, have you ever had occasion to testify in court of law as an expert witness in the field of latent fingerprint or palm print identification?
Yes, sir.
And how many times have you been qualified as an expert in the courts of Volusia County, Orange County, or the general Central Florida area?
More than 200 times in the state of Florida.
And can you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury how many times in the course of your duties as a fingerprint examiner or palm print examiner you have had occasion to make identifications of individuals from what are known as latent fingerprints and also rolled impressions?
Thousands of times.
Please, the court, the state would offer Ms. Aherd at this time as an expert in the field of fingerprint, latent, and palm print identification.
Counsel, you may inquire.
No objection.
You may proceed.
Mrs. Aherd, could you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what a latent fingerprint is?
Yes, sir. The palmar surfaces of your hand, you have different type of skin there than you do on the rest of your body. it has raised ridges, and along these ridges, you have tiny little sweat pores. A latent print is a reproduction of those raised ridges by perspiration or foreign matter that's on your hand onto an object when it's touched. The print is usually invisible, and to be made visible, it has to be processed through either powder, mechanical, or chemical means.
Now, ma'am, can you explain what the difference, if any, there is between a latent fingerprint and what is commonly known as an inked fingerprint or palm print?
Yes, sir. An inked print is a reproduction of these same raised ridges on the palmar surfaces of your hand by applying a thin layer of ink on those ridges and rolling it onto a card of contrasting color.
Ma'am, can you explain to the jury how is it possible for an individual to leave on an impression either by fingerprint or palm print?
By foreign matter that's on the hand and it's transferred onto the object that is touched.
Now, how do you go about comparing a latent fingerprint, and if you could explain a little bit of how a latent fingerprint might come into your possession for comparison purposes and what you would begin to do with it? 3 that time, didn't I?
Yes, sir. You asked me 2 questions at one time.
Gotcha. All right, well, let's go back a little bit, Dan. How do you go about beginning your procedure to compare a latent fingerprint or palm print?
Okay. Usually when we receive exhibits into the laboratory, they consist of the physical evidence itself. For example, a beer can. And that can will have prints on it, but we cannot see them. So we have to go through several processes to try to develop those prints. For example, we have a laser, or we can use super glue or powders, or if it's a paper item, we have different chemicals that we can use to make that print visible. Now, once the print is visible, we photograph it. And once we have the photographs, we try to compare those prints with ink prints. And what we're looking at in those latent prints to compare with the ink prints is what we call ridge characteristics. Now, ridge characteristics are like the ends of the ridges, or the ridges may run and fork into 2 ridges. We call those bifurcations. Or we may have a ridge that runs, forks into 2 ridges, and joins again to form 1 ridge, which we call those islands. And we also have dots, which are like tiny dots or periods. Those characteristics are what we use to compare a latent print with an ink print.
Now, can you explain to the jury how you use a fingerprint or palm print for the identification purposes of a specific person?
Yes, sir. There's actually 2 scientific bases for fingerprint identification. One is that the ridge configuration is unique. No 2 people have the same exact ridge configuration, and no person has 2 fingers with the same exact ridge configuration. Therefore, they are unique. The other one is permanence. From about 12 weeks after a baby is being formed, your fingerprints are formed. And from that time until decomposition, the ridge configuration never changes.
And let me ask you this, from any of the studies or any of the courses that you've taken from any authorized experts, are there any 2 known cases in the history of the world where more than one person had the same fingerprint?
Objection, Your Honor.
If you know.
If she knows.
No, sir, there has not been any.
So, can you tell us your opinion as to the specificity of fingerprint identification and as to the use of it in making a determination of a particular individual as having left a latent impression?
Could you please reword that? I'm
That's what
sorry.
I threw you on that for myself. Can you explain to the jury the purpose of your making an identification? Do you have a set standard, or is a set standard in your profession as to how many points of comparison you need between the latent fingerprint and the known fingerprint for you to call that as being a specific individual?
No, sir, there is no set number.
Do you have a set number?
No, sir, I do not.
Well, let me show you, ma'am, if I may approach, Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
What has been previously marked for identification purposes as states K for identification. Let me ask you, ma'am, if you're able to recognize that document.
Yes, sir, I am.
And if you are able to recognize it, can you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury when you first came into possession of that document?
Yes, sir, may I refer to my notes?
Yes, with court's permission.
Yes, sir.
It was received into the laboratory on December 21st, 1990.
And can you tell me who would have brought that to you, if you know?
Investigator Jim Lau.
And you know Investigator Lau from having a professional relationship with him?
Yes, sir.
And do you know where he works?
For the Volusia County Sheriff's Department.
Right. Now, ma'am, without telling me where you obtained this document, would you please look inside state Z for identification? Tell me if you can recognize it.
Yes, sir, I do.
Next speaker, Christine. All right, ma'am, can you tell, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, when you first came into possession of that document?
On December 22nd of 1990.
And without regarding to the location where you obtained it, can you explain to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury how you came into possession of that without the specifics of where it was located? Well, let me back up. You ever heard the term a Henry search?
Yes, sir.
Can you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury?
Objection, Your Honor.
Objection overruled. Go ahead.
Can you explain what a Henry search is?
Objection, Your Honor.
Objection overruled. You may answer.
Your Honor, may we come sidebar?
All right.
And before you go. Now, Mrs. Aherd, without describing where state Z for identification was obtained, do you recognize it?
Yes, sir, I do.
And did you use that document in any type of comparison with the thumb impression contained on the pawn slip before you?
Yes, sir, I did.
Now, let me ask you this, ma'am. Did you have an occasion to come into contact with Aileen Carol Wuornos?
Yes, sir, I did.
You see, let me show you, if I may, please. What have been marked for identification purposes as states double B for identification. Do you recognize states double B for identification?
Yes, sir, I do.
And if you were able to recognize states double B for identification, can you tell us how you obtained or how state double B for identification was processed by you?
Yes, sir, they're major case prints that I took on January 3rd, 1992 of Aileen Wuornos.
Now, do you see the individual whose roll impression print you took on that date here in the courtroom today?
Yes, sir, I do.
Could you point her out for the record, please?
Yes, sir, she's the blonde-headed woman at the end of the table with the burgundy-colored jacket on.
Stipulated, Your Honor.
State would accept the stipulation, Your Honor, that the witness is identifying the defendant, Aileen Carol Wuornos. Thank you, Your
May
Honor.
proceed.
Ma'am, did you have an occasion to compare states K for identification, state Z for identification, and the known roll impressions of the defendant, Aileen Carol Wuornos?
Yes, sir.
And can you tell us how you went about doing that? How would you make a comparison with those three documents and the use of them?
Using a magnifier, I put the exhibits beside each other and looked at the characteristics that I had described in all three of those exhibits to determine whether or not they were the same individual.
Okay. Now, states K for identification, you'll please review it.
Okay. Okay.
Is that under the name of Cammie Marsh Green?
Yes, it is.
And is that the item that you compared with state Z for identification as well as state double B for identification?
Yes, sir.
Can you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury whether or not you found any identifying characteristics between states K for identification and states D for identification?
K and which one?
K and Z.
Yes, sir, I did.
Can you tell me how many points of identification did you find?
There was more than 14.
Okay. Based upon your examinations of states K and Z, were you able to make a determination whether or not the person under the name of Cammie Marsh Green on states K for identification and person on states D for identification, that of Lori Christine Brody, are one and the same person or a different person?
They are the same person,
Is it your expert opinion positively?
positively.
Now, I would ask you to look, please, at states double B for identification, the known role impression that you took of Aileen Carol Wuornos. I ask you, ma'am, if you used states double B for identification and comparison purposes in relationship to states K and states D for identification.
Yes, sir, I did.
And could you tell, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, whether or not you were able to make any determinations from that comparison?
Yes, sir.
Please tell them what it was.
That the thumbprint on the pawn shop ticket bearing the name of Cammie Marsh Green, the inked fingerprint card bearing the name of Lori Christine Grody, and the inked fingerprints taken by myself of Aileen Wuornos were all three of the same individual.
That was the individual whose role impressions you took and you've identified in this courtroom today.
That is correct.
May it please the court, at this time, the state would offer states Z, K, and double V for identification as state's evidence.
Counsel, no objection, subject to the objection bench. The objection is overruled. Let the item be received and marked in evidence. Mr. Seymour, will you get me that? Yes, sir. You may mark. You may copy.
Thank you, Mayor. It will be stipulated that Aileen Carol Wuornos, the defendant in this cause, is also known by the name of Lori Christine Rohde, and that identification was made by this witness of the name of Lori Christine Rohde with that of Cammie Marsh Green, and the rolled impressions that she has testified to as all being one and the same person. With that in mind, the state will be withdrawing for the offer of evidence the state's Z for identification, Your Honor, based upon the stipulation of counsel.
All right, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. This time, Your Honor, the state has no further questions.
We inquire, who's my,
I believe we have no questions, Your Honor.
No questions, Your
all
Honor.
right, may the witness be discharged?
If we may have a number, Your Honor, just in case something comes up.
All right, now if you would leave a number with counsel.
Your Honor, I'm sorry, I don't mean to wrong.
They want a telephone number.
Good. Before she is released, may we publish to the jury?
Do what?
Well, we have no objection to being released. We'd like an opportunity to have the exhibits published to the
Sure,
jury.
well, while I'm deciding what we're going to do with her, if you would just leave a number with telephone, defense counsel, you can, all right, the rule isn't what we expect testimony. Yes. All right, inquire.
Sir, would you say your name?
Lieutenant Carl N. Clifford,
And Lieutenant Clifford, who do you work for and how long have you worked there?
the Volusia County Sheriff's Department, 24 years.
And can you tell the jury, I'm sorry, I didn't realize there were still some of the exhibits that were published are still being examined. Maybe we wait just a few more moments.
Right. All the exhibits been returned now.
No, Your Honor, they're still examining the fingerprint identification material. 610. You have a seat now, Your Honor?
Yes, sir.
Lieutenant Clifford, did you become involved in the investigation of the homicide of Richard Mallory?
Yes, I did.
And in that phase of the investigation, did you assist in or participate in the recovery of a firearm?
Yes, I did.
Could you tell the jury, please, when and where that occurred?
Your Honor, an improper predicate relevance.
The subject to the objection set forth in Vince Dr. Collins. So you may proceed.
Tell the jury when and where that occurred and where that area is located in Volusia County.
I'm the commander of the Volusia County Sheriff's Department Underwater Search and Recovery Team, and on January the 13th of 1991 through January the 16th, I commanded a team of divers searching for evidence in an area of the county on US 1 south of Nova Road between Port Orange and New Smyrna Beach, known as Rose Bay.
Now you've indicated that in 1991, January of 90.
Objecting, Your Honor. Leading.
I'm just for clarification.
Yes, 1991.
Okay. Approximately a year ago.
Yes.
Please proceed.
We conducted the search around the Rose Bay Bridge, to be specific.
All right, sir. I would like you to look at exhibits for identification 0, 1 through 5 and ask you, do you recognize the area those exhibits represent?
Yes, these are photographs of the Rose Bay Bridge, the area that I just described.
Do they truly and accurately depict the area in which the firearm search proceeded?
Yes, they do.
Your Honor, and do they truly and accurately depict the area as it appeared at the time of the search?
Yes.
Your Honor, we'd offer those into evidence as exhibit proper number.
Counsel, you viewed these photographs.
No objection, Your Honor.
Let the item be received and marked in evidence by the proper number.
That is states exhibit 18, thank you, Tom.
I'd like you to look at the next set of photographs in front of you, sir, and ask if you know what those photographs represent.
Yes, I do.
All right, those are photographs double F, 1 through 3 for identification. Can you tell the jury what the photographs represent?
A firearm that was,
May I approach for a moment? I'm not sure we've seen these.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me just bring them back to counsel?
Sure.
Whichever way you want to do it, they can approach the witness, or you can take it. So long we expedite.
Excuse me, Your Honor.
Sorry.
I am talking about the other photographs. No objection, Your Honor.
Can evidence or just no objection to see it?
No objection to see on what's proper readiness later.
Right.
Can you tell the jury what double F 1 through 3 represent?
this is a firearm that we recovered in the area that I just described on the afternoon of January the 16th
Of 91?
of 91, yes.
All right, sir, could you describe to the jury your search efforts and how the recovery was effective?
We had been searching for 4 days. We searched both sides of the bridge in an area approximately 25 to 30 yards in each direction of the bridge. On the afternoon of the 16th, we concentrated our search area to the southeast corner of the bridge, between the seawall and the first set of pylons supporting the bridge.
And what was the result of the narrow search?
That's where this firearm was found.
And the photographs represented in exhibits double F 1 through 3 depict the firearm as it appeared shortly after it was recovered.
That's correct.
What did you do with the firearm after you recovered it?
It was immediately placed in a styrofoam cooler containing the same water that we had recovered the firearm from.
Have you seen that cooler in the courtroom today, or
Yes, I have.
where is it?
I believe it's sitting right in front of me.
After the firearm was placed in the cooler, what happened to it, to your knowledge?
I kept it with me in the vehicle that we keep our dive equipment in. I transported it to the Sheriff's Operations Center and placed it in an evidence room.
And what type of security access is permissible to the evidence room?
It's locked at all times, and there are 3 keys to that room.
And did you make any markings, or were you able to in any way place any type of particular identification on the firearm itself?
I didn't place any markings on the firearm because it was rusty and covered with silt, and I didn't want to disturb the integrity of the gun, but I did mark the cooler.
And did you examine that cooler sufficient to determine whether or not that is the same cooler?
Yes, it is. It has my initials on it.
Your Honor, please, we would offer into evidence double F 1 through 3, which are photographs of the firearm as it appeared in its corroded condition before it was cleaned up.
Counsel? Let the evidence be received and marked in evidence.
That is states exhibit 19.
I'd like you to examine exhibit double D for identification.
Objection to publishing with the jury.
Stipulated that Mr. Tanner has popped it open and done all that stuff.
All right.
Your Honor, we would offer the pistol that was recovered from under Rose Bay Bridge in evidence this time.
Subject to the previous objection.
Right, that the item be received and marked in evidence by the proper number.
Second Exhibit 20.
May I have just a moment, Your Honor?
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, I have any further questions for the witness?
I have no questions this witness, Your Honor.
Need to keep the witness or maybe discharged.
Maybe discharge, Your Honor.
Discharged, Your Honor.
Mr. Down the park, sir, you are the rule, you do not go to testify in the case. Close it.